My name's Jennifer Branch, and I work in Kids Ministries at Bethany Church in Greenland, New Hampshire. This is part 2 of the workshop, What to Do with That Kid, as we look at different ways that behavior is communication. This time I want to share with you 5 sensory needs that are physical in nature. As we look at the research all the way back into the 70s, this idea of sensory integration and helping you have the right amount of sensory input to your brain so you can feel self-regulated or able to think and to be calm has been something we've studied in many different ways, and we have a much better understanding. There are the 5 senses, just like you learned about, but there are 2 more that many people don't talk about. And these are just as important for the amount of input they give for our brain. The first one is this vestibular input, or this movement input. And that's just like the inner ear. There's fluid in it. And as you move your head around, whether you're upside down or you're climbing the monkey bars or you're sitting in a swing and spinning or just up for a walk, all that motion is giving input to the brain. And each person needs a certain amount of that in order to feel self-regulated. I can see this right after lunch when I feel like I could go into a coma or a good long nap. But if I were to stand up and go for a walk, even just a 5-minute brisk walk, that amount of movement, which has to do with my head moving back and forth as I walk, that vestibular input is enough to wake up my brain so I can do the rest of my afternoon. The second sense is this idea called proprioceptive input, or we'll just call it deep pressure. And that's the amount of pressure on your skin or your muscles and your joints. And that gives really important feedback to the brain. In fact, that feedback has a very long impact. The movement impact we were talking about, that input can last up to 4 hours. But the deep pressure impact, sometimes those signals are still being given to the brain 8 hours later. So for me, I feel this deep pressure in the sense of being self-regulated right after an exercise class. After I've worked out really, really hard, I'm lying there on my mat, and I don't think I could move if I wanted to. I just lay there and I feel incredibly calm and peaceful. My body does not need to twitch, does not need to move. My brain is real slow and calm. And oftentimes the people at the end of a yoga class or after going for a run, any sort of exercise, will feel just a deep sense of calm. And that's this idea that you've had a lot of impact in your joints, a lot of deep muscle pressure and use, and it gives a lot of input to your brain, which is very helpful. The other sense, I'm going to combine oral and olfactory, but this idea of your smell and your taste. And those two often go together, like when you're cooking, you smell it, and sometimes you can almost taste it because it smells so good. Well, it's an input, and it's an important one for many children. If you think about, well, for adults too, but if you think about the flavors that have been very popular, mint is an alerting flavor. And if you are driving on a long trip and you pop in a stick of mint gum, helps wake you up and not feel so sleepy behind the wheel. And they have lavender in pretty much every lotion, cream, or shampoo right now because lavender is a calming scent. And again, as you smell it, it gives input to your brain. It helps your body calm down. The next one is this sense of visual input. And the visual input makes me think of when you're watching a fire and you just feel like you could gaze at it for a really long time. Or maybe the ocean. Just very calming. It's repetitive. It's neat because you can hear it too. But there's just this sense that you are calm just from watching something. And those two are real inputs for me, just being able to sit and watch a fire or watch the ocean. And the last one is this auditory. Like I said, the ocean is calming because you can also hear that crash, which is nice and rhythmic, not too distracting. Everybody has a different set point for their auditory input and how much they need. I don't want very much at all. I'm quite happy with quiet, calm music or maybe no music in the background. But my son, the louder the better, and he is actually more calm the louder the music is. And if it vibrates him because it's so loud, it's even better. He actually focuses better. For me, it's totally distracting, and I'm always walking around turning radio buttons off in every room of the house. But again, everybody has a different amount. And if you are at your correct set point, you'll be able to think and be calm and do your best. So if you think about all 5 of these senses, our children in our classrooms have the same senses and the same needs. They just have different amounts of needs. And often you can either be seeking one of these inputs or avoiding one of these inputs. And so if you think about all the 5 inputs that we just talked about, Sometimes a child's behavior, if you think about it like that scientist we were talking about, sometimes that child's behavior can be seeking something specific. And if you give them that, it kind of frees up their brain to focus on what you're talking about. So let's go through a couple of examples. Let's say it's a movement input. Well, perhaps moving in the class and doing toe touches or standing up or walking around, moving to a different part of the room could wake up their brain and uses actually a little bit of deep pressure while you're at it as they're using their joints. But just be able to move around can help give them the input that they need. You'll see those people who are seeking for it because they're actually constantly moving. It's like they need it more than they're getting all the time. They tend to be very fidgety, have a hard time sitting in their chair. So if you can build in movement naturally into the whole class there, you're going to be meeting that need. Same thing for the vestibular input, like we were talking about, or the proprioceptive, the deep pressure movements and needs. If you give them a chance to do bunny hops on the way to class, or everybody do wall push-ups, or hey, can you pick up that stack of chairs and bring it over here for me? All of those deep pressure movements are going to give them input to their brain. And it's very calming, any way that you can use those muscles and put information in at those joints. A simple one for a classroom for the sense of taste and smell is chewing gum. Again, it would be a nightmare if every 2-year-old came to class chewing gum, but if you have that one particular kid who just tends to be very fidgety, or might be licking the crayons, or always smelling the markers, they may be seeking some oral input. And gum is a food-safe product they can put in their mouth, unlike all the other arts and crafts. And then auditory, sometimes listening to soft music is very calming. Or maybe you have someone who's avoiding auditory input, and maybe a quiet corner or turning the music off would be helpful. Same thing for visual. You might have a kid who would really love to just lay on the floor with a little toy car and watch the wheels move back and forth, or look through a picture book or a picture Bible. They just are really seeking something to be looking at with their eyes that's calming and repetitive. I will be attaching a resource that was written by an occupational therapist, which is kind of the area of expertise for sensory needs, that lists many areas that you can try in a classroom, and it's also written for home, that you can address those 5 sensory needs and be thinking about how those behaviors specifically are either seeking or avoiding. And if you can figure out what it is, you're going to be much more successful in helping the kid meet their need, be able to think and be calm and learn, which is ultimately what we want in class. Good luck. Let me know how it goes.